James Mitchell Talk Live. We're so excited to have two powerhouse animal activists with us today from New York. We're talking to ALLIE FELDMAN-TAYLOR and Matt Dominguez, who are the powerhouses behind Voters for Animal Rights. And they work on a whole slew of projects around the country, but starting in New York, because we know that New York in a lot of ways is the center of the universe. So if we want to shut down slaughterhouses in our neighborhood, ban the sale of dogs and cats and rabbits in pet stores, stop the force feeding of geese for foie gras, get tougher penalties for capturing wild animals, and ban fur, who do you call? These guys. So take it away, ALLIE. We'll start with you. What are you working on amidst the COVID-19 crisis?
Hey, so thanks for having us. And Voters for Animal Rights, we work to elect candidates that support animal rights. We work to lobby to pass laws to strengthen animal cruelty, to stop animal cruelty. And we work to hold our elected officials accountable to humane voters. And certainly the COVID crisis has made us change the way that we strategize, and it certainly changed the way that we look at the way that we run electoral campaigns. But nevertheless, it certainly hasn't stopped us from running full speed to make sure that we get good people into office who are going to help us win the laws that we need. And we actually have elections coming up in June, and of course, the infamous elections that are going to be coming up in November. So right now we are focusing on the upcoming election in June for state Senate and for state assembly in New York. If we want to pass more laws in New York State, such as banning fur or shutting down slaughterhouses, then we need to have people in office who are going to support those kind of policies. And so right now we're putting a lot of our time and efforts into making sure that the candidates who are running understand these issues and that they're going to stand behind them.
So Matt, tell me, New York is obviously, in a lot of ways, the center of the universe. I'm here in LA, which is another big city where they say whatever happens in LA spreads to the rest of the world. But New York is the financial capital of the world. You know, if you can make something happen in New York, it's very likely to happen in many, many other, not only states, but around the world, in nations around the world. So do you feel that people are evolving the attitude toward animals, toward animal rights, especially now during COVID-19? It's pretty much been established that the overwhelming likelihood is it started in a slaughterhouse in Wuhan, China, just like SARS did, that now the slaughterhouses are being shut down because there's COVID-19 epidemics inside them. Workers are getting sick. Some of them are dying. We're in a new phase. Do you feel that we are, at a juncture where now a lot of the things that you've been pushing for will get more serious attention and not be dismissed, Matt?
Yeah, I would say that, being in New York City I've only been there for the last couple of years, and it's pretty incredible to see a city of our size. And of course, we like to think we're the center of the universe, but when it comes to policy, what we do in New York City really does kind of cast a shadow across the entire country. And one of the things that I have seen is that we've been at a tipping point for probably the last 2 or 3 years on animal protection issues, but most importantly on the farm animal issues, and really just at a tipping point where I think we're finally to the point where policymakers, when it comes to elected officials, really are starting to care and seeing that people care about changing the landscape and the laws that protect us and also protect farm animals on factory farms. And I would say that, right now we're in the middle of a crisis, but at the end of this crisis, I think that there is going to be a lot of momentum when it comes to looking at slaughter plants and slaughterhouses and the way that we raise farm animals. There's going to be a new look, not only from the animal protection standpoint and making sure that we protect animals, but also now from the health standpoint. We've always known that eating a plant-based diet is best for your health and best for your body and best for the environment. But what we're starting to see now with COVID-19 and the other issues is that there's a lot of stuff going in slaughter plants that's pretty scary. And COVID-19, I think, may just be the tip of the iceberg. And when we start digging deeper, and scientists and people who are able to look at it more in depth, we're going to see some really, really horrifying things. And policymakers are going to be forced to make changes because advocates, moms and dads and people who care about protecting their health and protecting their family are really going to start speaking up. And I will tell you, being in New York City, we've already been reached out by many council members who want to look at this issue and many others and really start taking some strong policy stances. And then once New York does it, we hope that it will flow to other parts of this country and then hopefully the world.
I agree with you 100%. I feel that we are really at a juncture. Those of us, and I know like Allie, who I've known for many years, and I want to get to know you better, Matt, but Allie and I go way back. I was born and raised in Midtown Manhattan, right across from Carnegie Hall. I had the torment of the carriage horses going by every day. I would wake up to the clip clops of these poor animals dodging traffic. And, you know, there have been vows by politicians to end this barbaric, outdated practice. And the amount of work that you, Allie, and other leaders like Donnie Moss and Adita Byrne-Krant, and I don't want to leave anybody out because so many people have worked so hard on this to get rid of these carriage horses. And now I'm in LA for the last 5 years, but my understanding is that you've made some incremental progress getting them into Central Park. Can you bring us up to date on that, Ellie?
Sure. So the carriage horses right now they're not working in New York City because they're obviously not an essential business. And I want to point out that the carriage industry continued to work up until the very last minute when the governor made it mandatory that they no longer be working because they're not considered essential businesses. So they'll try to put some spin on it and say, oh, we did the right thing, we stopped. No, that's not true. They were taking rides up until they were actually forced by an executive order to not be giving rides to the public anymore. On the legislative front, in 2019, legislation was passed that required that the horses be working in Central Park only. They still have to travel back and forth to their stables in Midtown Manhattan. The bill that passed last fall created new regulations that changed the temperatures that they could work in. So we are still going to be working, but there's a different standard that they'll use to determine when it's too hot or too cold for them to be out there. But certainly our work is not done, and we're hopeful that in the 2021 City Council that we will be able to put further restrictions on the industry to protect the horses from abuse and exploitation. But it all goes back to the fundamental tools that Matt and I talked about, where if we want to really make a dent in the carriage horse industry, we have to have good leaders in office who are going to make those tough votes for us. And it's not just about having elected officials in, you have to have a strong movement behind them as well. What I mean by that is in 2013 to 2017, when the city council was first looking at doing a ban, or not the first time they looked at it, but at that time period when they were looking at a ban, they took a look at the various constituencies that were involved. And they looked at the labor movement, who was with the carriage industry, and they looked at the animal rights activists. And I'm a huge supporter of labor unions. This is just one issue where I will never agree with them on. But we have to admit that they had a stronger voting bloc. They have decades and decades of entrenchment in local, state, and federal politics. And so
let me jump in and say you're absolutely right. And I'm a huge supporter of unions too. I've been a SAG-AFTRA member. I don't even want to say since when. It'll really date me. but I love my union, and I think unions are important. And they're not antithetical to capitalism, as some people would have you believe. They're workers getting together, exercising their rights, their First Amendment rights and other rights to gather collectively and speak in one voice. And it's part of the process. Yeah. Now, I interviewed a union worker who represents 3,000 slaughterhouse. The reason I interrupted, 3,000 slaughterhouse workers in Colorado, it so happens, slaughterhouse workers who she felt were really not being treated the way they should be treated. 3 of her union members had died. Others were stricken with coronavirus. And we spoke to her on the eve of the closing of the slaughterhouse. And we talked about a lot of things. The fact that they weren't going to be tested at that moment in time. I don't know if things have changed, that they were going to go home for 10 days and then come back. And what would that possibly do? And the spread of coronavirus, and the fact that this is a woman who was not in any way, shape, or form an animal rights activist. She represents people who slaughter and cut up animals. But she said, look, you can go without eating beef. If it's a question of somebody going in there and dying, or you having your dead animal part that you want to eat, we don't need to do that. And so what I saw listening to her, and there were moments I said, well, she sounded like a bit of an animal activist, because she was saying, you know, these human beings are being put in a position where they have to sacrifice their lives to make something that nobody needs to eat. All right.
Right.
It's obvious that millions and millions and millions of people are living without eating animals, and they're surviving. And obviously, since animals are the most inefficient food source, and it takes 8 to 25 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of steak, that we would actually be able to feed more people if we weren't eating this most inefficient food source. But the reason I bring it up is that now there's a way to work with union leaders. There's a commonality. In the slaughterhouses and other related industries, it's not just a question of animals being exploited. It's a question of human beings being exploited.
Absolutely.
Or, you might say we're all being factory farmed. So do you want to address that as possible ways that you could strategize with union leaders down the road?
For Matt.
One of the things for me is I've been working in the farm animal arena of animal protection and animal rights for most of my career, for over a decade now. And many, many years ago, when I was at a larger animal protection organization, I led the coalition that fought against ag-gag bills, which were the industry's way of trying to stop undercover investigations from happening in these factory farms, exposing the horrific conditions these animals live in. Our movement, it needs to be able to show the public the footage that's happening. And of course, they tried to criminalize it and tried to stop us from being able to use that footage. But one of the things that we learned very quickly through undercover investigations and having undercover investigators in these facilities is factory farms are not just evil for animals. They are a plight on our environment. They're a plight on our food safety. They are a plight on the workers. When I first started in this movement, I really kind of had a different view when it came to the workers in slaughter plants, and I kind of villainized them. But one of the things that I have learned over my career is that while maybe these workers are participating in a job that I would never want to be a part of, and I strongly disagree with, these are human beings that are deserving of compassion and respect as well, and they deserve to be able to make a living. But one of the things is they are often in marginalized communities, and they are indentured slaves. These people make very little money. They work very, very long hours. And it's not a surprise that the industry that abuses and kills billions of animals every single year in the most horrific way would also treat humans poorly. It's not too far-fetched to know that and to see that that's happening. And I think that the COVID-19 issue that we're facing is really kind of shining a light on the fact that these factory farms, these owners, Smithfield, Tyson, all of these folks that are big meat industry folks, they don't care about the environment. They don't care about their workers, and they sure as hell don't care about the animals. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to build bridges with someone that we may be on the other side with, maybe at a different time. We need to show as the animal protection movement, and especially when we're working on policy, that we are willing to reach out and work with folks that maybe we had disagree with in the past or disagree with on other things, but where we can find commonality, where we can find a way to work together, it's going to make us stronger, and it's going to bring policy, it's going to make policy happen a lot faster. And I really do think that if we approach this from a holistic standpoint of where we approach it from an environmental standpoint, from a health standpoint, from a worker safety standpoint, and from an animal standpoint, factory farming doesn't have a leg to stand on. And the more people we get under the tent to fight factory farming, the more likely we are to bring it to a faster and quicker death.
Yeah, and now just to give a general update to those watching, the big problem they're having is there's a bottleneck. They can't slaughter the animals because the slaughterhouses are closing down, but they still have to kill them. So in this horrific, Kafkaesque, nightmarish industry, and by the way, we invite anybody from the meatpacking, I call it slaughterhouse industry, the meat industry, any industry related to the exploitation and killing of animals, you're invited on Jane Unchained anytime. I would love to dialogue with you, because I know a lot of these same companies are killing animals. They see the handwriting on the wall now. They want to make money. And some of them are already investing in creating alternative meat products. They've invested in, at one point, Tyson had invested, I believe, in Beyond Meat. JBS, which is a Brazilian-owned company, has developed a meat alternative. So I don't even want to demonize them. We just want to end it. If you can make just as much money more easily with meat alternatives that taste very much like the real thing, that are better for the climate, better for human health, do not involve this. Why on earth wouldn't you? I mean, we're in a medieval, barbaric food system that needs to be updated. And so I think that there's a lot of ways to have commonalities with even these meat industry leaders. And some of the people I know are, because really, who pays the price for our purity? The animals. I don't care if a fast food joint is a fast food joint, it's what's in the fast food joint. And so we can transform, just like we want to transform farmers to get them to go from growing chickens to growing hemp or growing mushrooms. We can transform these companies too by dialoguing with them and showing them that there is another way where they can make money. And I think we're at that point now where really you may not want to have looked at it before, but now this is a bleep show, and this is blowing up in their faces. And the biggest problem they have, and there's a campaign, okay, nearly 2 million chickens being killed, but not processed. Processed means killed for animals. They're being depopulated, which is being killed because they can't be processed. They can't be killed and processed for food. And the same thing's happening to pigs. Meanwhile, we've got a swine flu outbreak in China, and there's been reports of avian flu. Nature is telling us swine flu, avian flu, COVID-19. Wake up. What do they all have in common? The abuse of animals. And everybody needs to realize this. And I believe that you almost have to be completely, willfully blind not to see this, Allie.
Yeah, we completely agree. And I think, just like Matt touched on earlier, there's a lot of finger pointing that's going on right now to countries abroad and how they use and exploit and process animals. But we're doing the exact same thing right here in New York City. There's 80 slaughterhouses in New York. There's no difference between the live animal markets that are here in New York City versus in China or any other foreign country. And I think that as New York and the rest of the country starts to recover, that is a time that we need to all take a humble, honest look at our food system and our public health system and start to make some really systematic changes in public policy.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and we're not going to be able to make these massive changes, especially when you're talking about reorganizing our food system, without it being done from a policy standpoint. My hat is off to all the people that have been doing all types of advocacy, but at the end of the day, policy has to be done to be able to be not only a backstop so that we as a society don't slide backwards, but also to make sure that these things are done in a manner that we don't end up seeing repercussions in the future that ends up allowing us to go back to the old ways. And so we have to get our elected officials involved, and we have to pass laws. I mean, that's why, for me, I applaud the work of folks that have been working on the foie gras issue for years and really raise the level of education for people to know what foie gras was and how it was produced. But when you think about it, the policy that we just passed last year was probably one of the most impactful laws that has ever been passed in the United States, and will spare more animals' lives than almost any piece of policy that's ever been passed in this country.
What is that?
So we in 2 years, there's a bill that was here that was signed by the mayor that will ban the sale of foie gras in New York City. New York City is the largest foie gras market in the country, one of the largest foie gras markets in the world. Roughly 20 to 30,000 birds a year are killed for foie gras to be eaten in New York City. And in 2 years, when the phase out comes into place, foie gras will be illegal to sell. this is a major victory where you're talking about hundreds of thousands of animals are going to be spared one of the most barbaric food processes of force feeding them that's known to man. And it was because of the work of advocates getting together and getting their elected officials on the local level to pass this legislation. We were really hopeful to build off that and to have a really phenomenal year this year. This has definitely caused us a little bit of heartache with the progress that we were making. But also, I do think that after we get through this, and we will, I mean, as a country, and especially New York City as a city, we will pull through this. We will be stronger because of it. And I will tell you, it will provide us an opportunity to have more dialogue on the pressing issues of the way that farm animals are treated and also the way that animals are treated in general. Because I think when you start to look at things from the standpoint of compassion, and what we're really seeing is we're really starting to show a lot of compassion towards each other because of the danger that we're all in. But I do think that that is going to spread, and we're going to be able to have a phenomenal opportunity to talk about the environment, to talk about animals, to talk about public health, and to talk about the safety of all of us together. And that's going to include reforming the food system.
Oh, the food system is so ripe for reform. And here's the thing. You know, you can talk to people till they're blue in the face about how industrialized agriculture is, you know, barbaric. It is cruel. There's a dying young pig on the floor of a killing facility. These are courtesy of Animal Outlook that did an undercover investigation. You can talk about how it's bad for human health, you know, and now especially the younger adults with obesity are more likely to be hospitalized. You can talk about everything, but now that it is impacting the dollar, okay, it's causing economic wreckage. If we didn't have animal agriculture, if we were a plant-based world, none of this would be happening. None of it. It started with the abuse of animals. All the experts essentially agreed, the conspiracy theories aside, it started at a live meat market in China, just like SARS started in the live meat market in China in 2003, and all the other zoonotic diseases. We've got a whole list here: swine flu, SARS, bird flu, MERS, coronavirus, mad cow disease. That now that it's impacting the pocketbook, okay? Even though advertiser-based media that's still relying on meat, dairy, and pharmaceutical commercials don't want to make the connection, it's getting out. It's getting out because the slaughterhouses are closing down. Now they are open to dialogue. Now,
well, I think,
go ahead.
I think one of the things you're going to see, though, is that, you know, right now there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of data about where this started, how this started, and I think that more likely than not that what you're saying is absolutely true. But because of the level that this has reached, because this has become a pandemic, because you're talking about the economy has been devastated by this, the fact that many are stuck in our homes and going to be stuck in our homes for months at all with social distancing, the magnitude of the impact of this is going to require finally that people outside of the animal protection movement and people who care about animals to do the research, to look at the data. You're going to start seeing universities, you're going to start seeing government agencies, both on the state and federal level. You're going to start seeing bodies that are not connected with the animal protection world researching this to find an answer so that it never happens again. And
there's an answer. Just don't kill animals for food.
But there's finally going to be the opportunity to pull that information together that's going to come from, I believe, a more verifiable source that people are willing to listen to. As an animal protection person, I have screamed from the rafters of why we shouldn't shove a pipe down the throat of a bird. I have discussed why you shouldn't castrate animals and why you shouldn't slaughter them, why you shouldn't lock a pregnant pig in a cage so small she can't even turn around for her entire life. But I will tell you that I have seen me speaking and the ability to effectuate change. And then when a veterinarian talks about it and says the same exact thing, because that person has credentials, that person is seen in our society as an expert, the level of openness that people have to be able to listen to that. And so that I'm really, really hopeful that organizations, educational institution, academia, scientists are going to come together after this, pull all the data together, and we're going to have a moment of, we told you so, but then there's finally going to be bodies outside of the animal protection organization saying we need to do reforms in a major way. And I think that that's going to be the catalyst to really start a conversation that's not from necessarily an animal protection standpoint, but from the protection of everyone involved with this?
Well, I feel we have a window for change now. Now people are, all addiction, and I believe that our culture suffers from a meat addiction, and I'm 25 years sober, recovering alcoholic. Addiction is a disease of amnesia, okay? So one of the reasons why programs, you say, just for today or one day at a time, it's because the amnesia is working. Your addiction's doing push-ups the whole time, waiting for a moment, and glamorizing the substance of choice and telling you to forget about. Don't remember that gutter incident. Just remember how nice it was holding a glass of wine at the fancy restaurant. And so you have to remind yourself repeatedly. And there is a window in every addictive cycle where you can hit bottom and have a moment of clarity. This is our window. We have to take advantage of it now, because people are actually open to listening because they're suffering. They're suffering the consequences. So by suffering the consequences, they now have an incentive to listen, not just because it's the morally correct thing to do, but because they are suffering as a result, and we can end that suffering. So I am so thrilled to be talking to Voters for Animal Rights, ALLIE FELDMAN-TAYLOR, Matt Dominguez, about all of their incredible programs. And are you a 501c3 that people can support, ALLIE?
We are a 501c4 political organization.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so people can best support us by going to our website. It's vfar.org, vfar.org, and they can actually sign up for our action alerts, get on our email list, or sign up to become an official card-carrying voting member of Voters for Animal Rights, and we'll even mail you a membership card.
Woo! I love it. So
you can carry around, and you can flash this whenever you go meet with your elected officials to remind them that you are a card-carrying member of Voters for Animal Rights. And that you're
Last question. You're based in New York City, which is super important. Obviously, we can make changes in New York City. They'll spread to the rest of the country. But do you have chapters in other states?
We are just New York for now. We have our work cut out for us here. We're an all-volunteer organization, and I think New York is the perfect place for us. New York City itself is larger than some entire states, and what we do here in New York City resonates across every state and across the country. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we're excited to get started as soon as COVID crisis is over.
Thank you so much. Amazing work. Matt Dominguez, ALLIE Feldman, Voters for Animal Rights. Support them, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.